Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to make a space heater that's extremely safe to use, and its origin goes back actually almost 60 years ago, and it all started with this magazine right here that belonged to my father. He was an avid reader and always had some type of reading material around, but the particular heater that he told me about years ago, he never made it, but he told me that it was in one of his old magazines. So I searched for about an hour until I found this particular magazine dated 1967 May, and one of the most amazing things is it was only 35 cents. So I think you go to the checkout stand now, they're like 10 bucks for a magazine. But anyways, this magazine contains a space heater that's super simple to put together. Anybody can do it. It just takes a little bit of effort to make it work, and it will heat a small area. This is not going to heat a large room, but it will heat a small room for hours, and it works extremely well. So I'll show you how to do it step by step, and I'm going to do it exactly as this magazine tells me to do it. Throughout the video, I'm going to put pictures that I took of that particular page and encircle each one so you can see exactly what I'm doing as I put it together. Now, I may have to do a little bit of tweaking on it because some of the items that were suggested to use to put it together, I don't even think they're made anymore, such as a metal bottle cap or spray can cap. Those are now made with plastic, so the only thing you could make them out of now would be plastic, which you can't do in a heater. So I'll show you step by step how to put it together. Now, the first item you need is a very large can like this, and sometimes these cans do have things in the lining, so I would recommend the first time you use this, you're going to be doing it for about 2 hours. I would allow it to burn off any possible things that they've sprayed on the inside or the outside of the can. I also used a safety can opener, and that's really important because you want the edges of this to have no sharp edges. As you can see, this is the cap that came off, no sharp edges, very safe to use. And so it's not like a standard can opener. These are something that I guess a lot of people may not even think about. They just use the old-fashioned kind that leave really sharp edges. So I do recommend using gloves on certain portions of this, but as far as cutting the can open, just use a safety can opener like this. I'll put a link in the description to everything I'm using to make it super simple if you want to put this together. But each item I'm using, I particularly picked, and I put a link down below so you can use it and do the exact same thing. So the first thing we need is a very large juice can. We're going to remove the label, and again, when you first light this the first time, make sure you do it outside so it can burn off any possible things that they've sprayed on it, such as any plastics or glue. Sometimes these are held on by glue. As you can see, there's glue on the back side of this, so we don't want that going into our finished area. So again, do your first test run outdoors. So the first step is we're going to mark 6 points on the top of this can. I'm using a metal specifically made for metal, thin metals, thick metals, whatever you got. But this particular one, this hole saw, is not really for wood, it is for metal. So I'm going to put 6 points on the top of this can to have the exact center, and that's what we want. Now that's not perfect, but it's close enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. So we're going to drill those 6 holes, and then in the center we're going to drill a very small hole for an additional item. Now, before I do my drilling, I'm going to put up right here on the screen a picture of the entire can kind of separated, and they're showing how you assemble it. But that is the picture I'm going to circle at the top, the first thing we're doing here, so you can see what portion of the work we're doing first. So there it is, directly from the magazine. Now I've got a Dremel tool in another part of the greenhouse. I'm going to go grab that and do a little bit of work around this and softening up these edges because this is very sharp. So just make sure that you do that either with a file, a Dremel tool, and also when you're putting it together, make sure you're wearing a good pair of gloves because this portion, it does have quite a few sharp edges. So you just want to make sure that you don't cut yourself on assembling this part of the can. Again, that's step 1. Now the next step, I've drilled a small hole right in the center of our large juice can. I'll show you on screen the photograph I took of the magazine, and that's the step. I'll do a little circle around it so you can see exactly what step we're at. We're now putting a small hole so we can run a bolt through and assemble all the pieces together. Now I'll flash back and forth throughout the video showing you each step, but this is the jar lid that it recommended using, and because of the height of the can and the tuna can, I'm deleting one item here. I'm deleting it the spray can lid, because it would just be, or the cap, it would just make it too tall. So I am deleting that one thing. I'm going to put my gloves back on and drill a hole through the can, or they call it the combustion chamber, and the jar lid. So we're going to do that, and we need it right in the center. So we'll do that next. Let's check our bolt and make sure it's the right size. Snug fit, that's what we want. Snug fit. May need to ream it out just a little bit, because we're going to have to do this with a pair of needle nose pliers to assemble this. So we want to make sure that it's as easy as possible. We don't want the hole too small for our bolt to fit through all 3 containers. Now the next thing we have to do is put some holes in the combustion chamber, and I'm going to use our hole saw there, specifically made for metal, and we'll put about maybe 4 to 6 in there. We just want to kind of carefully go, and remember to wear your gloves, because these things can jump out of your hands very easy. Now I want to say I'm putting very little pressure on the can. I'm letting the drill bit do the work for me, and I'm just going to put these all the way around, maybe one more here, but we don't want to put too many because we don't want to compromise the can to be too weak, so we don't want it to collapse on us when we're using it. Okay, so that's our combustion chamber. Now as you can see, I'm going to compare. This one has a little bit larger holes than the ones in the magazine, but I just wanted to make it easier for me. Rather than using a drill bit, I wanted to use my hole saw that I already had that was specifically made for metal. Again, you want to take your Dremel tool and soften up these edges, and let's move on to the next step. Now the next thing we want to do to our outer can and our inner combustion chamber, we want to put some holes in the base of each can using an old-fashioned bottle opener, can opener. So I'm going to go around the base and space them about 1 to 1.5 inch and just go around the outside of the can doing that. Again, I need to get my gloves on for that step. We're dealing with sharp metal edges, so we just want to make sure that we don't cut ourselves in this process. Now as you can see, the can has some extra bends in it. We want to take a pair of needle nose and straighten that out and just make it flat on the bottom. You may have to do a little bit of work there to make it just right, but we just want to make sure that the base of the can is still flat, so there's no gap between it and the device we're going to put it on to keep heat off of our surface wherever it might be. So we'll just go around the can, bending it, making sure that it's safe, and make sure that it's not sticking out on the inside as well. Again, this part right here has been a little bit more than we want it to, so we just take our needle nose pliers, and anything that's sticking out on the inside, we're going to bend it in and just do some creative bending there to make sure we don't have anything sharp pointing where our hand may come in contact with it. Now next we have to be careful about doing this, because there are some sharp edges in and about the can. We want to assemble this just as it is in the picture. We're going to take our combustion chamber, put our lid on top of it. That way there's a little, this acts kind of as a spacer between the inner can and the outer can. I'm going to carefully put this into the top of our large juice can, and we're going to attach each one. Again, you need that glove just in case you don't want to scratch your hand up with some sharp metal edges. So let's put our cap in next. And because we've cut holes in the top, we can kind of see the interior, but still it's not that easy. So you have to be, I know I'm probably not on camera, but there we go. Now we've got the inner can lid there, and now we're going to put our combustion chamber on that, and this is going to be probably twice as tricky if I can get that out. And that's a little bit harder to do because I can't quite see. So again, you have to use a little bit of patience to get it to assemble all together, which I'm not known to have a lot of. But just keep working with it, and you'll eventually get this inner can attached to the top, and there's a little bit of space at the top because of our spacer there. Now one of the ways to get this nut onto our bolt is to carefully use a pair of needle nose and just work our way down to it. It's a lot easier than using your hand because it's not as easy to get on there. And of course, it's going to take more than one try, but I can tell you that if you have a normal size hand, it's a lot easier than to use something like this. So we're just going to carefully put that down in there and just try to work it onto the threads. Turn it slowly, and once it starts, you can risk your hand if you're not wearing your gloves and just slowly twist it on, and you can work it all the way down. Now I can tell you very quickly, a good pair of needle nose is going to be your best friend in getting this on there, because you're going to have to hold it in place, and if like mine you do have a Phillips head on top, you can tighten it down with a screwdriver, but you still need something to hold that bolt in place. So just remember, you're going to need a very long pair of needle nose pliers. And there we go. We've got it securely in place. Our combustion chamber on the inside, our outer can, our exhaust ports, our intake ports are all there. So everything's ready to go to the next step. And I'll show you the next step in the picture as well, what we need to do. Now next, if you notice the article, it recommended getting a small piece of metal and bending it into shape, but I thought I want to try something a little different. So I found this plant hanger on Amazon, and the purpose of this is to install this on the side of our container, because the outer container gets hot just like the inner combustion chamber. So we need a way to lift it up, because we're going to have a hinged opening, and we can install new fuel without having to worry about burning our hands. Now this might get a little bit warm in this area, but way out here we should be okay with no problem. So we're going to install this with some self-tapping screws. Again, if you look at the picture, and I'll show you real quick, you can see it's a very small one. This one is a little bit further away, so we don't have to worry about burning our hand. All right, so we're going to install our opener, and I'm just going to use a self-tapping screw. I'm going to put that into our drill bit. It's a little bit off screen there, but I'm just going to install that. Try to keep it from falling out there. So we did our self-tapping screw there. Not too long. We don't have to have it going too far inside the combustion chamber, but just enough to hold our handle in place. So install the second one right here. A little tricky with this being right there on the edge, but we'll just do that real quick. And there you go. That is our handle. It's going to make it easy to open and close, to put out our flame whenever we're through, or to install a new fuel packet in there. So that way we've got a way to open and close it without burning our hand, and we just a little bit of safety there. Now next, on the opposite side of our opener here, we're going to install a small hinge on the opposite side right here at the base of this one, and also we're going to be using self-tapping screws again, so we'll have that hinged opening so we can get to our fuel outlet, put out the fuel, or install a new one in place of the old one. Okay, so we've installed our small hinge on the base of the can. I'll show you again in the photograph or the drawing of exactly where that goes, but it's on the opposite side of our can. That way we can open it and close it, as I mentioned earlier. And so we're just going to install that onto our base. And our base, the purpose of the base is to keep whatever area this heater is sitting on, to keep it from overheating. Now the base of this space heater is nothing more than just a cake pan or pie pan, and I'm going to install it like this. And the reason we have, again, this base is to prevent it from overheating or getting too hot on whatever surface it's sitting on. So we're going to install 2 more self-tapping metal screws, and then we'll be one step closer to completing our do-it-yourself space heater. Now, if you noticed in the picture, our canned heat, and amazingly, 60 years later, it's still called canned heat. But what we need to do is we're taking a tuna can as our next item, and according to what it says, is that this helps stabilize the flame. What we're going to do is we're going to punch some 4 holes around the corners and drill another circular hole right in the middle, a little bit larger this time, with, unfortunately, a wood saw. So I'm going to have to take a little bit more time and be a little bit more careful with it. But that's what it's recommending to do, is do that, and we'll be one step closer to having our portable space heater ready to go. So I wanted to talk just for a second about different types of fuel we're using. We're all using canned heat or sterno or what you see at a buffet. But basically, the size of these cans also dictate how long it's going to burn for. This one is 2 hours, this is 2.5 hours, and this is up to 6 hours. So depending on the size of can you can have heat for that period of time, and these are all safe to burn indoors. I always recommend having carbon monoxide and smoke detectors and a fire extinguisher handy, just in case something happens, someone knocks it over. So again, your can size is going to determine how long it works for. Now, This particular can is the one that's designed according to the article, a very small can, but if you do opt for the larger cans, you'll have to forego the little shroud that goes on top of this can because these are a much tighter fit. Now again, it's saying to cut a hole into the top of our tuna can, which is actually a shroud that goes over the canned heat portion, and this is supposed to stabilize the flame, and so we're just going to reverse it for a second and get a little groove going there so we can cut through. Now, under no circumstances would I try to do all this without a pair of really thick leather gloves. These are my favorite type of gloves. I'll put a link in the description because I buy these quite often on Amazon. But what we're doing here is we're going to put this on top of our heater, and that is supposed to stabilize the flame, help draw a little bit more oxygen into it there the way it's designed. And of course, again, if you look back at the picture of the original, that's what it's supposed to do, and that's the way they've designed it. I'm going to punch a few small holes in all four corners as well with my smaller drill bit. It also recommends in the article doing that with a pair of a chisel, but I think it'd work better just to drill 4 smaller holes around the perimeter. So I'm going to light our fuel, close our can up, and let it sit for a bit, and then I'm going to come back with my thermometer and show you some of the heat it's producing and how hot it can actually get. It's a great little portable space heater that you can keep in your camper, your camping gear, a small room, your greenhouse, wherever you need some portable heat that's very safe. Remember, always have the proper safety equipment when you're using it, no matter what. And if you have any pets or children, you want to make sure you take extra precautions that they can't get to it as well. Now, as I said before, don't use your first burn indoors. Let it burn outdoors. I'm about to take this outdoors and let it burn off some of the paints, the glues, and any other things that might be in there. But I want to do some temperature testing. And let's see. Earlier I saw over 400 degrees, but right now I'm looking at about 350. Like I said, this is burning off some of the residue paints. So I'm going to take it outside the greenhouse and let it finish off gassing off those items that we don't want, all those chemicals we don't want inside of our finished area. So I wanted to bring our portable space heater outside to allow it to off-gas anything that might be inside the can on the lid or anything like that. But it is putting out quite a bit of heat, and I would recommend doing this for a solid 2 hours to get rid of any possible contaminants that might be on the can, the lid, or anything else we've used. There we go. We're seeing some over 400 degrees there. I'm allowing it to burn anything off. I think that paint lid had just a little bit of, the jar lid had just a little bit of paint on it, so I'm allowing that to burn off, and that's where the smoke you're seeing. But once it finishes that, it'll give you a much cleaner burn. And I wanted to give you one last peek at the top of this can to see how much heat it's putting out. Seeing over 800 degrees at one point. There you go, it's jumping around. I can't hold the laser beam just perfectly steady, but a consistent 750 to 800 degrees, that's amazing for just a small space heater that you can put together in such a short amount of time. So guys, if you've ever been to a buffet and you happen to see them changing out the sterno cans, you'll often see a flame that's maybe just a couple inches high, but as you look down the top of that can, the way it's designed, the airflow pulls that flame up much higher and it heats the can much faster. So it's an amazing thing. Some of the flames are actually coming out of the can, so it's just creating that effect of airflow, which makes it get even hotter. When you feed oxygen to a fire, it does much better. So guys, I just want to say thanks so much for watching. If you have a question about this video or any previous video, please become a subscriber first, because I always put subscribers to the front of the line when it comes to questions. I just get so many questions and comments, there's no way I could reply to them. I think I had above 5,000 comments on a previous video that did quite well. So if you want to take a look at those, I've got an entire library of videos, and a lot of them pertain to creating do-it-yourself and homemade heating devices, which I enjoy doing a lot. And as you can see, I enjoy my yard. I enjoy doing bonsai, gardening, vegetable gardening. So just take a look at some of the previous catalog, and I think you'll find something you might find interesting. Guys, have a great day, and thanks for watching.